Welcome to this deep dive. We're going deep into mythical creatures.
Oh,
This is going to be fun. We got a really interesting mix of sources today.
oh yeah.
Yeah, a blog post about powerful creatures,
Okay.
but from a plush toy company.
What?
Yeah, a plush toy company, and a YouTube video, kind of a global tour of mythical beasts,
Mm-hmm.
and then an article that goes into origin stories
Oh, cool.
for like legendary figures.
Right.
It's going to be quite a ride.
It's amazing. Like, when you think about it, these creatures aren't just like monsters under the bed, you know?
Wow.
They really reflect like humanity's deepest fears, hopes, and how we've tried to explain the natural world through storytelling.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. We're going to start with a familiar creature, the dragon, but with a twist.
Ooh.
Instead of like the typical fire-breathing, treasure-hoarding dragon, we're going to meet Tiamat from ancient Mesopotamian mythology. Have you
Oh.
heard of Tiamat?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so Tiamat is more of a primordial goddess than a typical, like, dragon. In the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish Tiamat's body is actually split apart to create the heavens and the earth.
Wow.
It's a much more powerful creation myth than most dragon tales offer.
That's intense.
So imagine, like, a universe born from a powerful female dragon goddess.
Right.
That's pretty amazing visually.
Huh.
And it flips the script on the usual, like, damsel in distress narratives
Oh, yeah.
you see with dragons. It makes you think about how different cultures use mythical creatures to explain the universe, right?
Absolutely. It's a way of giving shape and meaning to the vastness around us. Like, how do we even begin to understand something as big as the universe? We need stories, we need metaphors,
Right.
and these myths also reveal what a culture values.
Right.
In this case, it's feminine power as the source of creation.
Okay. So we've seen how myths can explain creation, but they also serve as warnings about the dangers lurking out there.
Oh, yeah.
Let's journey to South Africa and meet the Inkanyamba.
Inkanyamba.
This one might be new to you.
It is. I've never heard of this one.
Okay, so the Inkanyamba is this giant serpent, said to control water and storms, lurking in the depths of rivers and waterfalls. And what's intriguing is there have been supposed sightings of the Inkanyamba in recent years.
What? Really?
Fueled by social media
Oh, wow.
and technology. Like, people are looking for the extraordinary, even in a world increasingly explained by science.
It's like we're wired for mystery. Even with all our tech, makes you wonder if these creatures are just stories or if there's something more to them.
While we're on the topic of creatures connected to nature, we have to mention the thunderbird of North American indigenous cultures.
Oh, yes, the thunderbird.
Yeah, very powerful symbol.
A powerful symbol of the storms that bring life-giving water.
Right. It's often seen as a harbinger of rain, connecting these cultures to the natural forces that sustain them.
It's about respect, isn't it? For the power of nature. Recognizing that we're not in control.
So, from dragons to serpents and thunderbirds, we've seen creatures that inspire awe and fear. But now, let's explore a creature that's become, well, a little more cuddly. Let's talk about the Yeti.
Yes, the Yeti. Or the abominable snowman creature of the snowy peaks of the Himalayas.
Right, often portrayed as a fearsome beast. But pop culture has a way of softening even the most intimidating creatures.
It's true.
Right, I mean, our plush toy source even features a cartoon Yeti named Yuki, who goes on adventures.
Oh, that's fun.
It's a great example of how pop culture reimagines these creatures, making them less scary, more relatable. Maybe you even had a Yeti plushie as a kid.
It's interesting how those childhood perceptions can change the way we view these creatures as adults. They become less about fear and more about nostalgia and entertainment.
But mythology isn't all cute Yetis and cuddly plushies.
No.
Some creatures represent the darker side of human nature, the consequences of our actions.
Yeah.
Let's dive into a myth that's a bit more cautionary, the tale of the Minotaur.
Oh, the Minotaur.
Yeah, you know that one,
Yeah,
right?
half man, half bull.
Right.
Trapped in the labyrinth.
Powerful symbol of punishment and consequence.
It is, yeah.
He's imprisoned for the actions of his parents, forever trapped in this intricate maze. The labyrinth itself is such a striking symbol. Imagine being trapped in a place where every turn leads to another dead end, constantly searching for an escape that might not even exist.
Oh, yeah. It's a powerful metaphor for feeling lost and alone, both physically and emotionally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The labyrinth represents being trapped, both literally and metaphorically.
Right.
It's a reminder that our choices have consequences, and that sometimes we can feel trapped by our own mistakes or the actions of others.
It's heavy stuff.
But even in the face of punishment, there's always the possibility of redemption. Think about Groot,
Oh,
from Guardians of the Galaxy.
he seems like the polar opposite.
Right. But his origins are surprisingly dark.
It's true. In the original comics, Groot starts as this destructive force, a monster, but over time, he undergoes a redemption arc, sacrificing himself to save his friends.
It's amazing how a character can go from monster to hero.
Right.
From embodying our fears to representing our hopes.
Yeah.
And speaking of facing challenges, let's talk about a creature that embodies the struggle against overwhelming odds. The Hydra.
The Hydra, oh yeah. Multi-headed serpent.
More than just that, though.
It's a symbol of the persistent problems we face in life.
Right. For every head you cut off,
Yeah.
2 more grow back.
Exactly. It never ends. Sometimes it feels like that, right?
That's why we still use the term Hydra to describe complex problems that are just incredibly difficult to solve.
Oh yeah, like a metaphor.
Like the Hydra's teaching us about persistence and resilience.
Yeah.
About never giving up, even when faced with seemingly insurmountable obstacles.
It's a good lesson though, right? Never give up.
It's a reminder that even the toughest challenges
Yeah.
can be overcome.
You got this.
But it takes determination.
Yeah.
And a willingness to keep fighting, even when it feels like you're losing ground.
We're stronger than you think.
The Hydra's lesson resonates across time.
It does, these stories. They tap into universal truths about the human experience. And they offer valuable insights into how we can navigate the challenges we face.
And sometimes those challenges feel almost apocalyptic, like an attack on Titan, where humanity is pushed to the brink of extinction by these colossal humanoid creatures.
Attack on Titan, that's a good example. It goes beyond simple monster battles. It explores themes of survival fear, the choices we make when confronted with unimaginable threats. It asks us, what would you do to survive when the world is on the brink of collapse? How far would you go to protect the ones you love?
That's a heavy question.
It is.
And it leads us perfectly to another creature that embodies our fear of the unknown, the kaiju from Pacific Rim.
The kaiju.
I mean, imagine skyscrapers in motion, crushing cities underfoot.
The kaiju tap into our fear of the unknown, right? Those forces of nature that we can't control. Some interpretations even see them as metaphors for environmental anxieties, the damage we're inflicting on our own planet.
So it's not just about giant monsters smashing things. There's a deeper message about our responsibility towards our planet.
Absolutely. Our choices have consequences.
And speaking of creatures with deeper meaning, Godzilla has evolved from a metaphor for the atomic age to this complex character who sometimes destroys and sometimes protects.
Right. It's like he's a force of nature himself.
He's almost like a force of nature himself.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone from colossal monsters to forces of nature. Now let's dive into the deep, where ancient forces like the Leviathan reside.
Ooh, the Leviathan.
And our source describes it as truth woven into the fabric of existence, guarding secrets and ancient knowledge.
The Leviathan ties into our fascination with the deep sea, a place still shrouded in mystery. It represents the secrets hidden in the depths, both literally and metaphorically. And just like the ocean depths, some knowledge is best left undisturbed.
It's a reminder that some things are better left unknown, that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. And while we're on the topic of mysteries, let's talk about a creature that's equally intriguing, but maybe a little less well-known.
The manticore.
The manticore. Human head, lion's body, scorpion's tail. Yeah, defies easy categorization. This hybrid creature has persisted throughout history, popping up in myths, literature, even games.
We can't get enough of it. It's like our fascination with the strange and unusual never fades.
And the manticore is a perfect example of that.
It really is. These hybrid creatures often represent our own internal struggles, the different aspects of ourselves that we're constantly trying to reconcile.
Okay, so we've encountered creatures that embody power, fear, even our own internal conflicts. Now let's explore those that blur the lines between human and animal, natural and supernatural. The shapeshifters.
Shapeshifters, oh yeah, they tap into our fascination with transformation, don't they? The ability to become something other than ourselves. Imagine the possibilities, the power to take on different forms, but they also represent the fear of the unknown. The idea that something familiar could suddenly become something dangerous.
Yeah, it's like that feeling you get when you're walking alone at night, and every shadow seems like it could be something lurking, something waiting to pounce.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling.
Starting with the skinwalker from Navajo lore. It can transform into any animal it desires.
Wow, any animal, that's powerful.
Yeah, pretty powerful creature.
The skinwalker is a powerful symbol of both transformation and deception. It represents the potential for both good and evil that exists within us all, and the choices we make that determine which path we follow.
Speaking of choices and consequences, Let's talk about a creature that embodies the fear of losing our humanity. Mythical. Or, as our YouTube source reveals, there's also the Wuji. They're both driven by this insatiable hunger for human flesh.
That's intense.
Pretty intense.
These creatures tap into the taboo of cannibalism, right? The fear of becoming something monstrous and driven by our baser instincts. And it's particularly interesting that the YouTube video emphasizes these creatures in the context of winter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the harsh conditions, the scarcity of food, they really amplify that fear of survival at any cost.
It makes you wonder, what would you do to survive in a situation like that? Where do you draw the line between right and wrong when your own survival is at stake?
It's a question that has haunted humanity since the beginning of time. These creatures force us to confront the darkest parts of ourselves, the lengths we might go to when faced with extreme circumstances. But shifting gears, we've explored creatures connected to the land, so let's dive back into the water with the merfolk.
Now, you've probably heard of mermaids, those beautiful creatures with the upper body of a woman and the tail of a fish.
Right, the classic mermaid image.
But what about the merman? Our video mentions this. Less common male counterpart.
It's interesting how the merman adds a layer of mystery to the myth. We're so accustomed to the seductive siren, right? The beautiful woman luring sailors to their doom. But the merman challenges those expectations.
And maybe it's a reminder that the ocean is full of surprises. And we shouldn't assume we know everything lurking beneath the waves.
It's a vast and mysterious world down there.
Speaking of surprising creatures, let's talk about the little people. And I'm not talking about cute garden variety fairies here.
Oh no, not those little people. These are far from cute. They're described as fierce warriors, incredibly strong and aggressive, despite their small size. It's a reminder that power comes in many forms. And we shouldn't underestimate our opponents based on appearances alone.
It's like that saying, don't judge a book by its cover.
And speaking of judging appearances, let's talk about lake monsters. Everyone knows Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster.
Of course, Nessie, a classic.
But our video highlights a different one, the Okanagan Lake Monster, from indigenous legends in British Columbia. And this one's a bit more demanding.
In what way?
The Okanagan Lake Monster was said to demand sacrifices. People believed they had to offer something to appease the creature and ensure safe passage across the lake.
Wow, that's intense. It shows how these mythical creatures were often seen as powerful forces that demanded respect, even fear.
It's like they were part of the landscape, part of the fabric of their existence. And you had to play by their rules to survive.
Right, it's about respecting the balance.
And speaking of creatures woven into history, let's talk about the pia bird.
The pia bird. Yeah, it's described as this dragon-like bird. And there are written accounts of it dating back to the 1200s.
Wow, really? So this isn't just folklore, there's some historical documentation.
It's fascinating how some of these creatures have a historical footprint, you know? Adding a layer of proof, even though we're dealing with mythology, makes you wonder if there could be some truth to these ancient tales.
Right, like maybe they saw something real, and that's what inspired the myth.
And speaking of blurred lines, let's talk about the Bakwas. This creature offers ghost food to lost travelers.
Ghost food? Okay, that sounds a little suspicious.
But there's a catch. Eat it, and you become a Bakwas yourself.
Oh no!
It's a pretty creepy take on you are what you eat.
The Bakwas serves as a warning about temptation, right? And the consequences of our choices. What seems appealing on the surface can lead to our downfall. It's a reminder that we should be mindful of the paths we choose and the things we consume, both literally and figuratively.
Okay, so we've explored creatures that are powerful, mysterious, even a bit mischievous. But now, let's turn our attention to the truly monstrous. Those that embody our deepest fears and anxieties.
We're delving into the darker side now, the creatures that represent the primal forces of chaos and destruction. These creatures often tap into our most primal fears, right? The things that keep us up at night and haunt our nightmares.
First up, we have Akita from Greek mythology, the mother of monsters.
Oh, wow, the mother of monsters.
She's basically the source of all evil, giving birth to some of the most fearsome creatures in Greek myth. It's like she represents the fear of where evil originates, the idea that there's a source of darkness that constantly threatens to overwhelm us.
It's a primal fear, the idea that there's something out there that's beyond our control, something that can unleash chaos and destruction. And sometimes that force of chaos comes from within ourselves.
Speaking of uncontrollable forces, let's talk about the Gorgons, those terrifying creatures with snakes for hair and a gaze that can turn you to stone. I mean, what's scarier than being completely powerless, frozen in place, unable to escape danger?
The Gorgons represent the fear of being paralyzed, both physically and emotionally. It's a fear that's deeply ingrained in us, the fear of being trapped and vulnerable.
And sometimes we're caught between a rock and a hard place, like with Scylla and Charybdis, those two sea monsters from Greek myth. They represent the no-win situations we sometimes face in life.
Oh, I know those situations all too well.
Imagine being caught between two equally bad choices. And no matter what you do, there's going to be a negative consequence.
It's the worst. It's
Yeah.
like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
It's a reminder that life isn't always fair. And sometimes we just have to do our best to navigate those tricky
You
situations.
just gotta keep swimming, right?
Right. It's all about making the best choice you can, even when there's no perfect solution. And speaking of difficult choices, let's talk about the Imputa, a shape-shifting demon from Greek mythology, often depicted as this beautiful woman who lures men to their deaths. She's a classic example of the femme fatale trope.
Oh yeah, the femme fatale. Beautiful but deadly.
The Imputa taps into the fear of being deceived, of being lured into danger by something that seems appealing on the surface.
Right, all that glitters is not gold.
It's a reminder that things aren't always what they seem, and we should be wary of those who promise us something that's too good to be true.
Trust your gut, right? Something feels off, it probably is.
We've journeyed from creatures that reflect our hopes and dreams to those that embody our deepest fears. It's been a fascinating exploration of the human imagination and how these creatures have shaped our beliefs and understanding of the world.
It's amazing how these stories, they can teach us so much about ourselves, about our fears, our desires, our values.
And we've only just begun. There's a whole world of mythical creatures out there waiting to be discovered. But for now, let's shift our focus from the sunny shores of Greece to the icy landscapes of Norse mythology. Get ready for Vikings, Valkyries, and zombies.
Zombies. In Norse mythology. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Indeed, our YouTube video guides into the realm of the Draugr Norse undead. And these aren't your typical shambling zombies.
Oh, what makes them different?
They possess superhuman strength, can increase in size at will,
Whoa, that's terrifying.
and have a rather unpleasant aroma.
Oh, so they're stinky zombies too. That's a new one.
Okay, so giant, super strong, stinky zombies sounds delightful.
Not exactly the kind of creature you want to invite over for dinner.
What exactly do these Draugrs want? Are they just looking for brains? Or is there something more to their undead agenda?
Well, like many undead creatures, they're often obsessed with guarding their burial treasures.
It makes sense.
But they can also wreak havoc on the living, tormenting those who wronged them in life. And perhaps the most terrifying aspect is their ability to enter your dreams.
Adding being haunted by a Draugr weight
Ah,
to my list of nightmares. But moving on from the undead, our video mentions dwarves. But these aren't the jolly bearded fellows we often see in fantasy stories.
oh, what's a Norse twist on dwarves?
Norse dwarves have a slightly more unconventional origin story.
Okay, I'm listening.
They're still skilled craftsmen, but they're said to have originated as maggots from the corpse of a giant.
Ew. Okay, maybe not the most glamorous origin story. But hey, if they can make amazing weapons and jewelry, who am I to judge, right?
Speaking of fantastical beings,
Yeah.
let's talk about elves. But again, Norse mythology offers a twist on the typical fairy tale image.
Okay, what kind of elves are we talking about here?
In Norse mythology, there are two types of elves. The dark elves who dwell underground and are associated with darkness, and the light elves who are said to be more beautiful than the sun.
So we've got goth elves and sparkly elves. Interesting. I guess even in mythology, everyone's got their aesthetic.
But let's move on to a creature that's both beautiful and terrifying, Fenrir, the giant wolf of Norse mythology. It sounds like something straight out of a heavy metal album cover.
Fenrir, that's a name I've heard before. What's his story?
Fenrir's story is pretty dramatic. He's the son of Loki, the trickster god,
Oh, Loki, always causing trouble.
and is destined to break free from his chains during Ragnarok, the end of the world, and devour Odin, the king of the gods. Talk about family issues.
Wow, that's intense. So this giant wolf is basically a ticking time bomb of destruction.
Maybe we should move on to something a little less apocalyptic.
Yeah, a change of pace might be nice.
Perhaps a soothing melody is in order. Let's talk about the Fossagrim, a water spirit who's said to play enchanting music on the violin.
Okay, that sounds a bit more relaxing. But I'm guessing there's a catch. Mythical creatures rarely offer free concerts.
Of course there's a catch. The Fossagrim is a bit of a trickster. He'll teach you to play the violin, but only if you offer him a sacrifice. And even then, His lessons might involve some painful side effects.
Oh no. So it's a deal with the devil kind of situation. Always a price to pay for magical abilities.
And speaking of deals with the devil, let's talk about the Huldra's seductive forest spirits who lure men to their doom.
Oh, the Huldra. I've heard of them. They're incredibly beautiful, but they have a secret,
They
right?
have a cow's tail. If a man sees their tail, he'll be driven mad with desire and meet an unfortunate end.
Whoa, talk about a deal breaker. So they're like the mythical equivalent of catfishing.
In a way, yes. They represent the deceptive nature of appearances. The idea that what seems alluring can actually be dangerous.
Good advice. Don't trust anyone with a cow's tail.
But now, back to those apocalyptic creatures. We have to talk about Jormungandr, the Midgard servant, another one of Loki's delightful offspring.
Another one. Loki's really been busy.
This giant serpent is so large that it encircles the entire world, and it's destined to fight Thor, the god of thunder, during Ragnarok. Imagine the epic battle. The god of thunder against a world-encircling serpent.
So we've got a giant wolf eating Odin, a giant serpent battling Thor Ragnarok. Sounds less like the end of the world and more like a pay-per-view event.
But let's zoom out from these specific creatures and look at the Jotnar, the giants of Norse mythology. They're basically the ultimate force of chaos, always trying to disrupt the order of the cosmos.
The Jotnar represent the forces of nature that are beyond our control, the unpredictable and the destructive. They're a reminder that we're not always in charge, that there are powers greater than ourselves that can shape our destiny.
It's like those stories where the hero has to battle the elements, fight against storms and earthquakes to prove their strength.
Right, it's about facing the forces that we can't control, accepting that we're not always in charge.
It's a reminder that sometimes we have to confront forces that are bigger than ourselves, forces that we can't control. And speaking of confronting forces bigger than ourselves, let's talk about the Kraken.
Ah, the Kraken. The legendary sea monster said to be so large that it can pull ships down to the depths.
Classic sea monster.
It embodies the raw power of the ocean, the vastness and mystery that lies beneath the waves. It's a reminder that there are still things in this world that are beyond our understanding, things that can both awe and terrify us.
I'm getting flashbacks to those deep-sea documentaries where they show creatures that look like they're from another planet. Fascinating and incredibly creepy. But let's move from the depths of the ocean to the depths of our minds and talk about the mare, a creature that's said to sit on your chest while you sleep, giving you nightmares.
Oh, the mare. That's a creepy one. It represents the fear of the unknown, the things that haunt us in our sleep. It's a reminder that even when we're most vulnerable, there are forces that can prey on our fears and anxieties.
Okay, that's officially too creepy for me. Let's talk about something a little less nightmarish, like the Norns, the female beings who control destiny in Norse mythology.
Ah, the Norns, yes. They're a fascinating example of how different cultures personify fate. They're not necessarily evil, but they're definitely not to be messed with. They spin the threads of our lives, weaving the tapestry of our destiny.
So they're like the cosmic weavers, determining the course of our lives.
Exactly. They remind us that some things are simply beyond our control.
Right. It's a bit bleak, but also kind of comforting in a strange way. Like accepting that there are things you can't change and trusting the flow of events. Speaking of flow, let's talk about Rataskar, the squirrel who runs up and down the world tree, Yggdrasil, carrying messages between the eagle at the top and the serpent at the bottom.
Rataskar. Now that's a name I haven't heard in a while. What's his deal?
Rataskar is a classic trickster figure. He's not necessarily evil, but he loves to stir up trouble and gossip. He's a reminder that information, even misinformation, can spread quickly and cause chaos. It's a lesson that's particularly relevant in our age of social media and instant communication.
So he's like the mythical equivalent of a social media troll, spreading rumors and causing drama just for the fun of it.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that we should be careful about the information we consume and spread, and always be critical of what we hear.
Don't believe everything you read online.
Speaking of critical thinking, let's talk about Sleipnir Odin's 8-legged horse. 8 legs. That's got to be one bumpy ride.
Sleipnir, wow, 8 legs. That's quite the horse. What's his story?
Well, Sleipnir is said to be the fastest horse in the world, able to travel between the different realms of Norse mythology, and he's actually Loki's son.
Wait, what? How does a trickster god give birth to an 8-legged horse? Actually, you know what? Don't answer that. I'm not sure I want to know. But let's move on to a creature that's a little less anatomically confusing. Let's talk about trolls, those big, ugly creatures that live in forests and mountains.
Trolls, the classic fairy tale monster.
Norse trolls are a bit different from the ones you might find under a bridge. They're incredibly strong, but also incredibly stupid, and they turn to stone and sunlight.
So basically, giant grumpy toddlers with a sun allergy.
In a way, yes, they represent the forces of nature that are both powerful and unpredictable. They remind us that brute strength isn't always enough, and that sometimes we need to use our wits to overcome obstacles.
Right. It's like those stories where the hero has to outsmart the giant rather than fight them head-on, brain over brawn. And speaking of brains and brawn, let's talk about the Valkyries, those fierce female warriors who choose who lives and dies in battle.
Ah, the Valkyries. Powerful figures, often depicted as beautiful and strong, riding winged horses and carrying spears and shields. They decide who gets to enter Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain Warriors.
So they're basically the gatekeepers of the afterlife,
Yeah.
deciding who gets into the warrior heaven.
Exactly. They represent courage, strength, and the glory of dying in battle.
That's a pretty big responsibility.
It is, and it reminds us that even in death, there are forces at work that determine our fate.
Let's move from the battlefield to the well of knowledge and talk about Mimir, the wise being who guards that. Well, I hear Odin traded an eye for a sip of that knowledge. That's dedication.
Mimir, the guardian of wisdom, a powerful figure. He represents the pursuit of knowledge and the lengths we're willing to go to achieve understanding.
Knowledge is power, but sometimes gaining that power comes at a cost.
It's true, there are always sacrifices to be made.
Speaking of origins, let's talk about Audhumla, the primordial cow who nourished the first giant, Ymir.
Audhumla, the cosmic cow, a fascinating figure in Norse mythology.
She's said to have licked the first god, Bori, from a block of ice. Imagine that, a cow licking the first god into existence.
She's like the cosmic milkmaid of Norse mythology, a reminder that even the most powerful beings have humble beginnings, and that even a simple act of nurturing can have profound consequences.
Absolutely. And speaking of profound consequences, let's talk about Hugin and Munin, Odin's two ravens who fly around the world gathering information.
Hugin and Munin, Odin's eyes and ears, a powerful symbol of the importance of knowledge.
Ravens are such intelligent birds.
Yeah.
I bet they bring back some juicy gossip from their travels. What do they represent in Norse mythology?
Hugin and Munin represent Odin's thirst for knowledge, his desire to know everything that's happening in the world. They're his eyes and ears, constantly feeding him information and shaping his understanding of the world. It's a reminder that knowledge is power, and that staying informed is essential for making wise decisions.
They're like Odin's personal news network, always keeping him in the loop. But let's move from ravens to warriors and talk about berserkers. Those fierce warriors who are said to enter a trance-like state of rage in battle.
Ah, the berserkers, the ultimate Viking warriors, practically invincible in their rage. But their fury was so intense that they sometimes even attacked their own allies.
Oh, that's intense.
Uh-huh.
So they're like a double-edged sword. Powerful, but unpredictable.
Exactly. They represent the primal forces of war, the uncontrolled rage that can consume even the bravest warriors.
It's like they embody the double-edged sword of passion, the way it can be both a powerful driving force and a destructive force if left unchecked.
It's about finding that balance, right? Harnessing the power of our emotions without letting them control us.
And speaking of controlling emotions, let's talk about Garm, the hound who guards the gates of hell, the Norse underworld.
Gurm, the hellhound, a fearsome guardian.
We've got hellhounds now. Norse mythology is really upping the ante on scary creatures. What's Garm's deal?
Garm is the Norse equivalent of Cerberus, the three-headed dog who guards the gates of the Greek underworld. He's a fearsome creature with glowing eyes and sharp teeth, and he's destined to fight Tyr, the god of war, during Ragnarok.
Okay, between a giant wolf, a giant serpent, and now a hellhound, Ragnarok is sounding less and less like a party and more like a total apocalypse.
Well, it's certainly not going to be a quiet affair, but let's shift our focus from the underworld to the sky and talk about Hrsvelgr, the giant eagle who sits at the edge of the world and creates the wind with his wings.
An eagle that big must have a wingspan the size of a small country. What does Hrsvelgr represent in Norse mythology?
Hrsvelgr represents the power of the wind, the force of nature that can both nourish and destroy. He's a reminder that nature can be both a friend and an enemy, and that we have to respect its power.
Right. The wind can be a gentle breeze or a devastating hurricane. It all depends on how nature chooses to wield its power. And speaking of nature's power, let's talk about Nidhogg, the dragon who gnaws at the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil.
Nidhogg, the dragon of destruction, a powerful symbol of the forces that threaten to undermine the order of the cosmos.
So he's like the ultimate anti-environmentalist, trying to destroy the very thing that gives life to the world.
He's a reminder that even the strongest foundations can be eroded over time, that nothing lasts forever, and that we have to be vigilant in protecting the things we value.
Speaking of protecting the things we value, let's talk about Skull and Hati, the wolves who chase the sun and moon across the sky.
Skull and Hati, the wolves of the cosmos, always in pursuit, never giving up.
So they're like the Norse equivalent of day and night, the constant chase, the eternal struggle.
Exactly. They represent the constant cycle of day and night, the eternal struggle between light and darkness. They're a reminder that even the most constant things in our lives are subject to change, that darkness can always threaten to overwhelm light.
It's like a cosmic game of cat and mouse, with the sun and moon always trying to stay one step ahead of the wolves. Speaking of cosmic forces, let's talk about the Disirar, the female spirits who protect and guide people.
The Disir, the protective spirits, a reminder that we're not alone in the world.
They're like guardian angels, watching over individuals and families, offering protection and guidance.
Exactly. They represent the benevolent forces that are always looking out for us, even when we don't realize it.
It's a comforting thought. To think that there are benevolent forces looking out for us, guiding us on our journey through life. Speaking of journeys, let's talk about Filja, the animal spirit that accompanies a person throughout their life.
Filja, the spirit animal, a powerful symbol of our connection to the natural world.
They're like spirit guides, right?
Yeah,
Guiding and protecting us on our journey.
exactly. They represent a person's inner self, their true nature. It's like having your spirit animal walking beside you, guiding you and protecting you.
It's like having a furry, feathered, or scaly best friend who's always got your back.
And speaking of friends, remember the Kraken? That giant ship-sinking sea monster we talked about earlier?
Oh yeah, the Kraken. How could I forget?
Well, there's another creature in Norse mythology that's sometimes called a kraken, and it's actually a giant squid. A giant squid? Wow, that's even more terrifying than a giant octopus.
It certainly is. It represents the vastness and mystery of the ocean, right? And the creatures that lurk in its depths.
It's a reminder that we've only scratched the surface of what's out there.
And sometimes, those creatures are closer than we think.
That's a chilling thought.
Okay, that's enough ocean for me for one day.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the Nuk, a shape-shifting water spirit who lures people to their deaths.
Oh, the Nuk, another dangerous water spirit.
The Nuk can take on any form, but they often appear as beautiful horses or handsome men, luring people to the water's edge before drowning them.
So they're like the mythical equivalent of sirens, using their beauty and charm to lure unsuspecting victims to their doom.
Exactly. They represent the deceptive nature of appearances and the danger of being lured in by something that seems beautiful or alluring.
Good advice. Don't trust anything that's too perfect, especially near water.
But now, let's talk about a creature that's a little more majestic. The Valraven, a supernatural raven associated with death and war.
Valraven, the Raven of War, a fascinating and somewhat morbid creature.
Valraven are larger than normal ravens and are often seen on battlefields, feasting on the corpses of the slain. They're a bit morbid, but they represent the cycle of life and death, the way that death nourishes new life.
It's a reminder that everything is connected, and that even death is a part of the natural order.
When speaking of the natural order, let's talk about the puka, a shape-shifting creature that can take on many forms.
The puka, a trickster of nature, always up to something.
The puka can appear as a horse, goat, rabbit, even a human. They're tricksters, sometimes helpful, sometimes harmful, and they often play pranks on people.
So they're like the mythical equivalent of that friend who loves to play practical jokes on you, always keeping you on your toes.
Exactly. They represent the unpredictable nature of the world, the way that things can change in an instant.
Life is full of surprises, that's for sure.
Right. Life is full of surprises. And sometimes those surprises come in the form of a shape-shifting puka. But let's move on to a creature that's a bit more protective, the Spriggan, a grotesque creature that guards treasures and ruins.
Spriggans, the guardians of ancient secrets.
Spriggans are incredibly ugly and misshapen, but they're also incredibly strong and fierce, and they're not afraid to fight to protect their treasures.
They're like the ultimate protectors, loyal and fierce.
They represent the idea that some things are worth protecting, even at great cost.
It's about standing up for what you believe in, protecting the things that matter most.
See, sometimes you have to fight for what you believe in to protect the things that matter most.
Ah.
And speaking of fighting for what you believe in, let's talk about the Wolver, a creature that's said to be a benevolent werewolf.
A benevolent werewolf. Now that's something you don't hear every day.
A werewolf that's actually nice. That's a refreshing change of pace.
It is. It challenges our assumptions about werewolves, doesn't it?
The wolver lives on an island in Scotland, and it's known for leaving fish on the windowsills of poor families.
Ah, that's so sweet. It's like a furry Santa Claus spreading cheer and kindness instead of fear and destruction.
The wolver is a reminder that even creatures that are often seen as monstrous can be kind and compassionate, that appearances can be deceiving, and that we should always look for the good in others.
It's a heartwarming thought and a good reminder that there's more to the world than meets the eye. But for now, let's take a break from the chilly landscapes of Norse mythology and journey to a land of sunshine and ancient stories, Australia.
Australia, land of diverse wildlife and ancient legends.
Australia is a land rich in mythology and folklore, with creatures that are both wondrous and terrifying. Let's begin with the bunyip, a creature from Australian Aboriginal mythology.
Okay, bunyip. That's a fun name to say. What exactly is this creature?
Descriptions of the bunyip vary, but it's often said to be a large amphibious creature with a dog-like face, a horse-like tail, and flippers.
Okay, so it's like a chimera of different animal parts.
It is, and it's said to lurk in swamps and billabongs, and it's known for its terrifying roar.
So it's like the Australian version of the Loch Ness Monster, a creature of the deep, lurking in the shadows, waiting to be discovered.
Exactly. It represents the mysteries that lie hidden in the Australian wilderness, the unknown creatures that might still exist in those vast and unexplored landscapes.
It's a reminder that the world is full of wonders and mysteries, and that there's always something new to discover, even in the most familiar of places.
And sometimes those mysteries are more ancient and powerful than we can imagine. Let's talk about the rainbow serpent, another important figure in Australian Aboriginal mythology.
Ooh, a rainbow serpent. That sounds pretty magical. What's its story?
The rainbow serpent is a creator god responsible for creating the landscape and all living things.
Wow, a creator god. That's a pretty big deal.
It is, and it's said to be a giant serpent with a rainbow-colored body.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And it's associated with water, rain, and fertility.
So it's like a giant, colorful snake that brings life to the world. That's a pretty awesome image.
It is. The rainbow serpent represents the power of nature and the life-giving force that sustains all things. It's a reminder that we're all connected to the natural world and that we depend on it for our survival.
It's a powerful symbol of the delicate balance of nature and the importance of respecting the forces that sustain us. Speaking of powerful forces, let's talk about the yowie, a large, hairy creature that's said to inhabit the Australian wilderness.
The yowie, yes, the Australian Bigfoot.
The yowie is basically the Australian version of Bigfoot, right? A tall, ape-like creature with long arms and reddish-brown fur. It's said to be shy and elusive. But there have been reports of encounters with the yowie, often accompanied by strange noises and footprints.
It's like a real-life mystery, a creature that might exist on the fringes of our reality, hidden from view but leaving tantalizing clues of its presence.
And that's what makes these cryptids so intriguing, right?
Yeah.
The possibility that there are still creatures out there that we haven't discovered, creatures that defy explanation and challenge our perceptions of reality. So which cryptid are we starting with?
Let's begin our cryptid exploration in the icy landscapes of the Arctic, where the Inuit people tell tales of the Quolupalik.
Quolupalik. That sounds like a name, whispered on the wind, a name spoken with fear and reverence. What exactly is this creature?
Imagine yourself as a child, playing near the edge of the ice. You hear a strange humming sound, you look around, but there's nothing there. Then, suddenly, a hand reaches out from beneath the ice and drags you into the freezing water. That's the Quolupalik.
Whoa, that's terrifying. It's like the boogeyman of the Arctic, a creature that preys on children's fears and lures them to a watery grave.
The Quolupalik is a cautionary figure, a reminder to children to stay away from dangerous areas, particularly thin ice. It's a way of teaching them about the dangers of their environment through storytelling.
Right, like those fairy tales that warn children about wandering off into the woods or talking to strangers. There's always a lesson hidden within the story, a way of passing down knowledge and keeping kids safe.
Absolutely. And speaking of cautionary tales, let's talk about the adlet, a creature from Inuit mythology that's said to be a monstrous hybrid of a wolf and a human.
Ooh, a wolf-human hybrid. That sounds like something straight out of a horror movie. What makes the adlet so terrifying?
The adlet is a fearsome creature. It's said to be incredibly strong and fast, and it's known for its insatiable hunger for human flesh.
So it's basically a werewolf, but even more terrifying.
In a way, yes. The adlet represents the dangers that lurk in the wilderness, the primal forces that threaten human survival.
Right. It's like those stories where the hero has to face their fears to confront the darkness that exists both within themselves and in the world around them. It's a reminder that we're not always at the top of the food chain
Yeah.
and that there are forces in the world that can easily overpower us.
Exactly. And speaking of powerful forces, let's talk about the Amarok, a giant wolf from Inuit mythology that's said to hunt alone, unlike regular wolves that hunt in packs.
Ooh, a lone wolf. That's a classic symbol of strength and independence, but also of danger and isolation. What makes the Amarok so special?
The Amarok is a fearsome predator, often seen as a harbinger of bad luck. It's like that lone wolf that stalks your nightmares, the embodiment of your deepest fears.
So like a symbol of those fears we can't quite face head on.
The Amarok represents the wildness and unpredictability of nature, those forces that are beyond our control. It reminds us that we're not always in charge, and that sometimes we have to trust our intuition to guide us through the darkness.
Speaking of trusting our intuition, let's talk about the Ijiraq, a shape-shifting creature from Inuit mythology that's known for its mischievous nature. Shapeshifters always add a level of intrigue to mythology. What kind of mischief does the Ijiraq get up to?
The Ijirak is a master of disguise, able to take on any form, and it loves to play tricks on people. Imagine this. You're traveling through the Arctic wilderness, and suddenly your guide disappears. You call out their name, and you hear their voice answering you, but you can't see them anywhere. Then you realize that the voice is coming from a nearby rock formation, or a clump of trees, or even a patch of snow. That's the Ijirak, messing with your mind and leading you astray.
So it's not just changing shape, it's like it messes with your perception of reality.
Exactly. It plays on your doubts, your fears. It makes you question what's real and what's not.
It's like a mischievous spirit of the wilderness, playing pranks on unsuspecting travelers
Oh.
and reminding them that they're not as in control as they might think.
Right. It's a humbling experience to realize that you're not always the smartest one in the room, or in this case, the wilderness.
Speaking of humbling experiences, let's talk about the Mahaha, a creature from Inuit mythology that's said to be a giant hairy humanoid with long fingers and fingernails. Giant and hairy usually means trouble in the world of mythical creatures. What makes the Mahaha so unique?
The Mahaha has a rather unusual method of attack. It tickles its victims to death.
Tickle to death. Seriously, that's got to be the weirdest way to go in mythology. Imagine trying to explain that to the ancestors. Yeah, I was out hunting, and then this giant hairy creature tickled me to death. It's both hilarious and terrifying.
It is, isn't it? It's a reminder that even the most seemingly harmless things can be deadly, that we should never underestimate our opponents, and that sometimes the greatest threats come from the most unexpected places.
Okay, so we've had creatures that are scary, creatures that are mischievous. Now we've got one that's kind of funny. Let's dive into the depths of a lake now and encounter the Manipogo, a lake monster. Said to inhabit Lake Manitoba in Canada, lake monsters always capture the imagination. What's the Manipogo like?
The Manipogo is often described as a long serpent-like creature with a horse-like head and flippers. It's said to be incredibly large, and there have been many reported sightings of the Manipogo over the years.
So it's like the Canadian version of the Loch Ness Monster, a creature of the deep lurking beneath the surface, a living mystery that continues to intrigue and mystify.
Exactly. The Manipogo represents the mysteries that lie hidden in the depths of our lakes and oceans, those unknown realms that hold secrets we may never fully uncover.
It's a reminder that there's still so much that we don't know about our planet, and that there are still creatures out there that defy explanation and challenge our understanding of the natural world. Speaking of challenging our understanding, let's encounter the Palrayuk, a creature from Inuit mythology that's said to be a giant walrus-like creature with long tusks and a spiky back.
The Palrayuk, a fearsome creature of the Arctic said to be incredibly strong and aggressive, and it's known for attacking kayaks and boats.
That's not good. You're out on the water.
No, not at all. It's also said to be able to control the weather, often blamed for storms and rough seas.
So it's like the ultimate Arctic sea monster. Part walrus, part kraken, and a little bit of a weather god thrown in for good measure.
The Palrayuk represents the raw power of nature, right? And those forces that can threaten our survival. It's a reminder that we're at the mercy of the elements and that we need to respect the power of the natural world.
Respect for nature is a recurring theme in mythology. And speaking of powerful forces of nature, let's talk about the thunderbird, a creature from Native American mythology that's said to be a giant bird that controls thunder and lightning.
Ah, the thunderbird. A classic mythical creature found in many different cultures around the world, a powerful symbol of the forces of nature, embodying the awe-inspiring power of storms.
Imagine a bird so large that its wings can create thunder, and its eyes can flash lightning. It's both majestic and terrifying, a reminder that we are small and insignificant in the face of nature's power.
Absolutely. The Thunderbird reminds us that there are forces in the world that are beyond our comprehension, forces that we can only marvel at and try to understand, and sometimes those forces can guide and protect us.
Speaking of guidance and protection, let's talk about the Tunnua, a creature from Inuit mythology that's said to be a spirit that can take on many forms. It's often associated with the aurora borealis, those magical dancing lights in the sky. What's the Tunnua's connection to the aurora?
The Tunnua is said to control the aurora, making it dance and shimmer across the sky. It's also considered a guardian spirit, protecting people from harm.
So it's like a celestial artist and bodyguard, all rolled into one, protecting people from harm while creating a breathtaking light show in the sky.
The Tunnua represents the beauty and mystery of the Arctic and the spiritual forces that connect us to the natural world. It's a reminder that even in the harshest and most unforgiving environments, there is beauty and wonder to be found.
And sometimes those wonders are closer to home than we think. Let's talk about the Jersey Devil, a creature that's said to inhabit the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. It's like the unofficial mascot of New Jersey, right?
It is. The Jersey Devil is one of the most well-known cryptids in the United States. A winged creature with the head of a goat, the hooves of a horse, and a forked tail. It's known for its blood-curdling scream, a sound that echoes through the Pine Barrens, sending chills down the spines of those who hear it.
So it's like a Frankenstein monster of different animal parts stitched together to create a creature. That's both fascinating and terrifying.
The Jersey Devil represents our fascination with the strange and unusual, those creatures that exist on the fringes of our reality, challenging our understanding of what's possible.
Right. It's a reminder that there are still things out there that we don't understand.
Yeah.
That the world is full of surprises. And that maybe, just maybe, some of those campfire stories we heard as kids might have a grain of truth to them.
And sometimes those surprises are hidden in plain sight, lurking in the shadows of our own backyards. Speaking of surprises, let's talk about the Loveland frog, a creature said to inhabit the area around Loveland, Ohio.
Loveland frog sounds kind of cute, actually. What's so special about this frog?
Well, the Loveland frog is said to be a large bipedal frog with leathery skin and a wrinkled face. It's about 3 to 4 feet tall, and it's said to have a distinctive musky odor.
So it's like a giant smelly frog, man. That's a unique visual, to say the least.
It is. The Loveland frog is a reminder that even the most familiar creatures can take on a monstrous form in our imaginations, that our fears and anxieties can transform the ordinary into something extraordinary and unsettling.
It's like our minds are playing tricks on us, taking something harmless and turning it into a creature of nightmares. But speaking of creatures of nightmares, let's talk about the Mothman, a creature that's said to inhabit the area around Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
The Mothman, a classic cryptid often associated with disaster and the unknown.
The Mothman is often described as a large winged creature with glowing red eyes. It was sighted numerous times in the 1960s, often in connection with strange events or disasters.
It's like a harbinger of doom, a creature that appears when bad things are about to happen, a warning from the unknown.
So it's not just a creepy creature, it's like a symbol of something darker, something ominous.
Exactly. The Mothman represents our fear of the unknown, right? And the possibility that there are forces at work in the world that we don't understand.
It's like those stories where the hero encounters a creature that seems to be a symbol of something larger, something that represents the darkness that exists in the world. It's a reminder that there are things out there that we can't explain, and that sometimes the things we fear the most are the things that we need to face in order to grow and evolve.
It's about facing our fears and finding the courage to move forward even when we're afraid.
And sometimes those fears take on a tangible form, lurking in the shadows, watching us with glowing eyes. Speaking of glowing eyes, let's talk about the owlman, a creature that's said to inhabit the area around Monaghan, Cornwall in England.
The Owlman, a creature of the night, a mysterious and unsettling figure.
Owlman. That sounds like a superhero name, actually. But I'm guessing this isn't a friendly crime-fighting owl.
No, the Owlman is said to be a large, owl-like creature with glowing red eyes and sharp talons. It was sighted several times in the 1970s, often near a church.
So it's like a giant creepy owl that hangs out in graveyards. That's definitely not something I want to run into on a dark night.
The Owlman, like many cryptids, embodies the fear of the unknown, those things that lurk in the shadows, waiting to pounce.
It's a reminder that we're not always in control, that there are things out there that can harm us, and that we need to be aware of our surroundings.
But it's also about finding the courage to face those fears, right? To not let them control us.
But for now, we've reached the end of our cryptid journey, our exploration of these mysterious and elusive creatures.
That's the beauty of mythology, though, isn't it? There's always more to explore, more to discover, more creatures lurking in the shadows, waiting to be unearthed.
And that's what makes these deep dives so much fun. We get to delve into the stories, the history, and the beliefs that have shaped our understanding of the world. We get to confront our own fears and fascinations along the way, expanding our minds and our understanding of what's possible.
It's about opening our minds to new possibilities and embracing the mystery and wonder of the world around us.
Hopefully, we've sparked your curiosity today and encouraged you to go down your own rabbit holes, explore the myths and legends that resonate with you, discover the creatures that capture your imagination, and challenge your perceptions of reality.
Keep searching, keep questioning, and keep exploring. There's a whole world of myth and wonder out there, just waiting to be discovered.
Keep your eyes peeled for the extraordinary. Embrace the mysteries that surround us, and never stop questioning the boundaries of what we think we know. Who knows what incredible creatures are still out there, waiting to be discovered. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time for another adventure into the world of the unknown.